We don't have to. We don't have to have everything figured out. I think that is part of this process. Is that how do we deal with things when we don't have it figured out, when we don't have the answer, when we don't know what we're doing, when we're not sure about it, or when we haven't a clue, and how do we respond in that situation? So tonight is a guided meditation, because it was supposed to be last week. There's also something I wanted to take from the class 2 weeks ago in the summary. And it was 2 bits to it. One has to do with surrendering to life in the sense of trusting what is happening, trusting our reality. I think it's a difficult. I think it's a very difficult thing to take on board, or to. And I don't want you. I'm not going to ask you to do it, right? I'm not going to try and force you to take on a position which you might find very contradictory. I find it contradictory, so I know that if I find it that way, then other people do as well. We're facing this situation of having degenerative illness, very serious illness, which is very difficult to cope with, to manage, to stay alive. So trusting in this circumstance is, I think it's a big ask. Yeah, it's a big ask. And at the same time, there is something here. And so what I want to do is just try to delve into this a little bit and see if we can take some steps, and that will bring us to a place where we have a greater capacity of trusting life as it is, with all its difficulties and challenges. When we have, a singular challenge, maybe a relationship finishes, or somebody behaves badly towards us, and it's unpleasant. We can take that as a challenge to what can we learn from it that we can use for the rest of our life, right? That's how that idea of trusting life works. It works, okay, it's been maybe we were even in a crash or something serious happened to us, and we have to deal with that thing which happened to us. And so trusting that something good will come from that thing that happened to us. It's a way of giving us courage to face the difficulty. But the circumstance that we're facing is not something that happened to us. It's something that is happening to us now and for the foreseeable future. For those of us with real degenerative illness, which, is likely to end our lives, something will end our lives. So that's not a problem, but our lives will end as a result of it. So trusting in a process, or trusting in life which is going to end our life, this is a difficult thing to take on, right? It's is not easy. But if something happened to you in the past and, maybe scarred you in some way, hurt you, you've been living with the ramifications for a long time, and it can be very hard to trust that. And that's something which happened. Here we have something which is happening. And so I think the degree of difficulty in trusting something which is happening, and that is harming our physical life, possibly it's harming our emotions, our emotional reality, hurting our mind, our brain, possibly. And, being rational about it, that's something which is going to continue into the future. So how can we trust this? Is it, let's take it, because even the question, how can we trust this, I think it's too strong a question. It's too difficult a question. I don't know that I can. So for me, then, that question really isn't so good, because I don't know. If we use the question, is it possible? This is one of the techniques to explore a difficult reality. Is it possible to imagine ourselves trusting, life with all the problems that it's brought and will bring? Is it possible to imagine ourselves trusting life? Maybe. I can definitely feel a sense of openness to engaging with that question. Is it possible to imagine trusting life? And as Karen said, it's entirely possible. It's entirely possible. So we don't have to force ourselves to trust life. If we just imagine the possibility of ourselves trusting life, we're already feeling that. It's already happening. Because we're imagining that possibility. So we are imagining it. So we experience it in our imagination, in our mind, in ourself. So we're going to come back. We're going to come back, and we're going to delve into this sense of trust. I want to tease out the psychological challenge. Or maybe psychological is not a strong enough word. To tease out the life and death challenge. Because it's suggesting, the question is suggesting, to trust the process which ends with our death. Is it possible to imagine trusting in the process we call life that ends in our death? is it possible to trust in life, even though no matter what we do between now and that moment in the future, this life ends? Is it possible for us to imagine trusting in the rest of our life? And you might have a very certain response like, Karen, yes, it's entirely possible. I might find there's more emotional conflict with the possibility of that. So we don't have to force ourselves to imagine. Just considering the question, is it possible to imagine trusting life which ends with our death? Because if it is possible for us to trust in our life, which in our future life, which will end in our death, does for everyone. If it's possible for us to trust in this, if we do that, doesn't this have a big impact on our attitude towards life? For instance, if we fully, if we really carry this out, if it really takes place, we're just exploring it, if it really takes place, then we won't have anything to regret. I mean, we might feel regret at sometimes, because we have all different kinds of feelings, but we won't have an attitude of regret. We won't have an attitude that becoming ill and suffering as we do, we won't have an attitude that this is wrong. We may feel that it's wrong at times, of course. But we won't believe that it's wrong. We won't have the attitude that it's wrong, because we trust life. Thanks, Karen. I'll read out your comment. When you put it that way about ending in debt, I'm less confident. I'm going all the way into it. I'm going all the way into it. Because at different moments, it's, how will we live the rest of our life up to that point of death? Like, that's the rest of our life. How will we live that? And so this is a question of exploring that. And when we really look at it, of course, we feel other emotions start to come up. And so, I'm not surprised that your confidence retreated a little bit. I think that's okay. The key thing is to remain open to the question. It's okay to feel less confident, because our emotions will change in all kinds of ways. And if a question triggers an emotional state, so it's overwhelming, then we need a different question. So this is always a fine-tuning process. And I've gone in really for the deep end, talking about our death. So everybody dies. So this isn't it can't be a bad thing. How can it be a bad thing? Well, we're sort of taught and conditioned that death is a bad thing. But if we, rationally speaking, if we really ask, how can that be true? If nobody died, we'd have, we wouldn't be humans. We wouldn't be, in a sense, we wouldn't be alive, actually, if we never died. But that's going into science fiction. Is it possible for us to trust life with the capital L that contains my life and your life and everybody and everything else's life? Is it possible to imagine ourselves trusting in capital life? I'm aware this is a difficult question, and it was touched on 2 weeks ago, and that's why I just thought, yeah, let's practice a little bit of courage and step into this, even if it turns us around a bit. Imagine if we trusted life. We wouldn't have an attitude of doubt. And in a way, our suffering would be meaningful, because we still, suffer different things physically and psychologically, and that we still suffer loss. We still suffer our journey of emotions and mental states to develop this natural trust, not an imposed trust, not something which comes from the belief that we should trust, but trust because we're part of life. We're part of something greater. Trust because in that vision of the great eastern sun rising, we have consciousness, we have basic goodness, we have this foundation of consciousness, which in itself is pure. We can think and feel all kinds of things, and we can be conscious of those things, but our consciousness remains clear. So maybe our thoughts and feelings at times, we shouldn't, let me try and say this right. We shouldn't necessarily believe in them. Yeah. If our perspective on reality is based on our thoughts and feelings, then they're going to be prone to change and disruption. But if our perspective on life is based on the foundation of consciousness that comes from being present, something that we can trust in being present. Because when we're simply being present, Nothing's being demanded in the experience of being present. So if you are being present right now in this moment, there's something trustworthy in this. In simple awareness, there's something deeply trustworthy. So if we have a practice which involves being present, being aware, and we ask ourselves in the experience of being aware, is this something that I can trust? And our meditation practice becomes a place of trust, unconditional trust. So it doesn't matter how long we live or what happens to us in the future. We have this trust within ourselves, which is potentially, or possibly, it is always accessible whenever we're conscious. Trusting doesn't make life easy, but it gives us a different kind of strength. It frees us up from self-pity. It frees us up from, why is this happening to me? I wish this wasn't happening. If we had, if we brought trust all the way through, we might feel sometimes that I prefer this wasn't happening. Of course, and we can have those thoughts, of course. But our deeper truth is one of accepting reality as it is. And not trying to change things out of a state of fear, because we trust reality. Therefore, what do we have to fear? We can even trust our suffering. So this, I feel, really changes the relationship with our suffering. If we can trust our suffering isn't a bad thing anymore. Yeah, we can't, how can we condemn it? So this is process of trusting life is a real journey of liberation. And this is something which I missed earlier. I didn't really feel capable of talking about it. But this journey, this development of trust, developing our ability of trusting life, trusting our suffering. This changes us. It liberates us from suffering. I'll try to be precise about this. Of course, everybody who lives suffers eventually, whether they're blind to it or not. And whether you're enlightened or whatever or not, the suffering is simply natural. To experience physical pain and emotional, mental pain, all of these things are natural. Somebody you love dies and you feel loss, you feel pain. It's completely natural. But we have learned to avoid our suffering. We judge our suffering as being something that's bad, which is happening to us. Yet if we can trust our suffering, then it's not simply something bad which is happening to us. In fact, because we can trust it, it's a good part of our life. And I'm getting closer to the stage of perceiving this illness, the suffering that comes from illness, as a part of liberation, liberating myself, liberating ourselves from our own suffering. And liberating, try and be clear about it. It doesn't mean we won't physically suffer or go through loss, go through emotions, which we call suffering, or thoughts, which we call suffering. Doesn't mean that those things won't happen. We don't turn into a white sheet of reality. But our response to it, our attitude, will be because we're conscious of our feelings and our thoughts and our physical suffering. We're conscious of our suffering. We're present with it. So when we're present with these moments of suffering, we don't suffer them the same way. We are liberated. It's no longer a terrible thing which is happening to us. It's something, in fact, which we can trust. I've avoided considering illness as a part of liberation. But in the end, I can't deny it. If we really practice being conscious, in fact, all paths are the path of liberation. But it's so difficult on the one hand when we are suffering like with chronic degenerative illness. That's much harder. But it also means that the opportunity that presents itself is much greater. If we're mostly happy and everything's more or less okay, and no big issues, or everything's life, it's okay. Moderate maybe, a bit boring sometimes, but okay. We're not faced with such a difficult challenge. So it's in a sense much harder to liberate ourselves, to really grow. But when we're faced with great difficulties and we take them on and we grow from them, our potential of growing is much greater. So this was laying the groundwork. So we'll finish with a meditation. Firstly, I just want to say that to thank you for having the courage to be here and to face this. So at the beginning of this short, simple meditation, I don't want you to make any big effort. Initially, I'd just like you to relax. I'd like you to know that in this moment right now with me, that I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm not asking you to be different from how you are right now. The way you are right now is perfect. Just to be here. With all of your reality, all the difficulties, all the problems, whatever's going on. Every single aspect, thought, feeling, every cell in your body, everything is welcome. No matter how big or small, everything is welcome. I trust this moment. I unconditionally trust this moment. So let us take some steps. Is it possible that you trust this moment, simply being here together? Being conscious. Is it possible to trust the experience of being conscious, being aware, being present? As you're present right now, is it possible for you to trust this moment? Do you feel open? That part of your mind or emotions is open, or that your body is relaxed? If you can imagine yourself trusting this moment, you'll notice that there's an openness. You notice that you really have the capacity to be present. And the more present you are, the greater the sense of trust. So here we are, trusting life moment to moment. In this place of trust, what is there to be afraid of? In this place of trust, we have the possibility of being free, of not being hurt by our suffering. We have the possibility of noticing that when we are present and we are suffering, we have the possibility to trust our suffering. and that we don't have to feel frightened of the suffering we will have in the future. We may return to this present moment, noticing ourselves being present and trusting this moment again and again. We may imagine, is it possible? We may imagine that if we trust moment by moment by moment, again and again, for the rest of our lives, we will live with tremendous freedom. And we may have the possibility of trusting our own death. The practice is to return again and again to this present moment and trusting in now.